all the books and everything.
I like it. It looks good. All
Uh-huh.
right.
It's one of my favorites, I think.
Which one?
Well, just all the books.
Oh,
It's one of
it
my
is.
favorite,
It is.
flippers
Well, and
there.
this is neat because this, and this kind of goes to what we're going to talk about today.
Hmm.
I really like it. The early books of Phyllis and how like there were a lot of self-publishing. It was a lot of really specific topics. They were small. They were to the point. It's almost like a souped-up pamphlet instead of a
Right.
book, which is
Right.
it's kind of neat. Like it's taking on some really cool activism to the next level.
Hmm.
So anyway, I think that's good. Well, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? We're live
Okay.
here. People have heard us enough.
All right. So, folks, we are going to go ahead and get started with today's Unauthorized Caucus. I'm Jordan Henry, Director of Research with Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. And with me, we have Ryan Height, Communications Director, Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. And today we're going to talk about a very important topic to discuss. We've had varying degrees of lightheartedness and serious issues here with these discussions, but of course, a lot of Americans right now are discussing the issue of recent mass shootings and what we as a society can do about that. So, we want to get into something that's not surface level, but to get beneath that. And before we do get into that topic, I would encourage you to please share this video with your friends. You've heard us say this on these videos before, but it really does help whenever you can or even share this with other people, or to subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe wherever you're watching this live video. It really, really does help us, not only to make sure that our content stays in front of you, but to help beat the big tech algorithms so we can get this out there to more people who can stand to have these civil conversations that go beyond surface level and really get into the heart of these different issues. So if you would just take a moment right now, even to do all of those things, like, share, and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate it. And also be thinking as we launch into this topic, what thoughts do you have on this subject? Everybody's got an opinion, and we want to hear what you have to say about this, what conversations you're having with people that you're around. So leave us a comment, or send in a question wherever you're watching, so that we can get your thoughts on this as well as we have this discussion. So without further ado, let's get into it. What's causing school shootings and
Yeah.
other mass shootings?
Well, and this was this morning we talked about this, which like we say, this is really a neat opportunity for us to be able to bring some of these discussions to y'all that we're having here behind the scenes. But I mean, one of the comments I made that led us off into lots of discussion this morning was, of course, the left automatically turns the school shooting discussion into gun control. Without time, it's about access. They make it about access to guns, what type of guns it is, the proliferation of guns in America. And of course, as conservatives, we have very strong feelings about that, pro Second Amendment. Most of us, the ones who are right. But, that's the thing, is all of a sudden you get sucked into this argument about defending the Second Amendment, which is a good thing. I want to defend the Second Amendment, but we are at a defensive argument. We are arguing from, just when you look at it from a debate standpoint, you're arguing from a position of weakness. So to be able to then take that and flip it to that, hold on, let me argue for some things. That's what conservatives need to do more often. And in these discussions, we are constantly finding ourselves on the defensive about the gun issue, which is a worthy cause to take up. But really, if you look at it at the root of it, like we all say, but it's kind of a quick, we'll say it and then move on quickly back to the mechanics of firearms and why certain things shouldn't be banned. Guns aren't the problem. Well, it's true. Guns aren't the problem. But then that begs the question, what is? What is the problem? Why are we seeing, and really whether it's schools or grocery stores or just city streets, why are we seeing over and over again this indiscriminate, just vile wickedness that leads people to murder innocent lives without reason? I mean, it's horrible enough when it's one person who does it to another for a reason, but there you can actually kind of understand and point to something. So-and-so had an issue with this person, therefore they decided to go and take a gun or a knife and end their life. It's despicable, but it's understandable. This stuff, though, like we were talking this morning, I've played, video games. I've been an avid sports shooter all my life, and never once have I ever found a situation where I'm angry enough or sad enough or I feel a strong enough emotion that makes me want to hurt another person let alone walk into a school and murder innocent children. Like, I can't fathom this. So what's leading people to do that? And I think that those are the causes that conservatives need to be talking about, rather than getting sucked into defending guns in this argument. Again, a worthy cause, but not the cause of school shootings. So what is behind that? That's what we had. And that's where we kind of led off into realizing this is a multifaceted answer that we dive into, because a lot of people bring up, video games. A lot of people bring up, not just institutionalized, government schools, but depression and medicating children at levels we've never had before. I'm sure someone out there would talk about vaccines. I'm not sure that's something I care to go down, but I mean, there are lots of things that come up about why are young people, young men in particular, showing this kind of erratic and violent behavior at a rate that we've never seen before, when arguably guns are harder to get than they ever were before the National Firearms Act and the Gun Control Act of '68. So it's not those, it's something else.
Yeah. I think the first thing that really needs to be established, and we've already talked about this earlier, but I think that the number one thing to remember is that I don't think there is any one cause that you can point to. If you said that it was entirely antidepressant medication and the over medication of children that was causing this, well, if that was the only factor, then every child who's being medicated would then go out to do this, which we know is not true. And likewise, if you pin it to a bad background, a broken family, or violent video games by themselves, then you would see so much more of this than what we actually do. So my personal thoughts on this are, we should not ignore any of those causes, because they're all important. But at the end of the day, it's a combination of those things. There's not any one thing that's causing this sort of depraved behavior and this underdevelopment of these boys that go out and do this sort of thing. So I think that that's important to recognize. There's so many different factors. There's not just any one factor that causes somebody to go out and do this. But that being said, that frees us up to be able to say, what are some of the contributing factors here? And we do not have the time to go into everything, because there is so much going on in our society that's contributing to this. But I think we can hit on a couple of the big ones. And one I think that John and Andy Schlafly touched on very well in the column that they wrote a few weeks ago, is worth talking about. And that is the video game aspect. Their column, which is available at phyllisschlafly.com. We'll put it in on this video too in the description as well. Violent video games unleash more terror. And they very ably go into the link between violent video games and a lot of the more recent shootings that we've seen. Now, there are a lot of conservatives on this issue that are not in agreement. And in fact, John and Andy Schlafly in their column go into the fact that a Supreme Court decision a decade ago saw a split between Justices Antonin Scalia and Samuel Alito. And that is a very rare thing. So obviously, there's a lot of debate, even from the conservative side, on what degree violent video games play into this question.
And I mean, beyond even, you could talk about the argument of whether it's protected by the First Amendment or not. But I mean, and this is, and you could tell me if you can disagree or agree. I'll leave that open to you. But one of my opinions is, I see stuff like this, and I even I'm a little disappointed when conservatives fixate on video games specifically, because to me, the desensitization of young people to violence, especially the committing of violence on another person, not even just like distant war. And like I said, first person shooters of our era, when I say our era, when we were young, like Call of Duty, good guys, bad guys, Americans, Nazis, like even this is a little bit more black and white than some of the stuff that's out there now. But not to get off in the weeds, like just to come back to it though, it's not just video games, media in general has done two very specific things in my mind. First of all, to the point, one of the points that John and Andy made, they talked about binge gaming in here. What was it? Binge gaming, which may be a key factor in mass shootings, has increased 13% since 2020. first of all, staring at a screen, and I think that I am far inside of all of the studies that agree with, or that I am agreeing with here, staring at a screen and lacking the kind of person-to-person, in-person contact, which certainly didn't help students to be shut out of schools for a year plus during COVID. That really does something to a person, especially young people whose brains are still developing. If you stare at a screen, and I'm sure this is true of Netflix just as much as video games, you're really kind of messing with your interpersonal skills there, and it really starts to mess with your emotional and mental state when you just stare into the screen for hours and hours on end for enjoyment or entertainment. It's literally, and again, this isn't me making it up, studies show it's literally turning off other areas of your brain that are very important. And it's like a muscle. The less you use it, the harder it is for it to come back online when it's time to be around other people and interact, and nonverbal communication and what we would call normal social behavior. So I would say that screens in general are damaging to young people's social behavior, but then not just in video games, but in Hollywood, in TV, in movies, the desensitization to violent content has just been prolific. And also, I mean, you could go into all the other things, but, and I know, like, if you start going down the rabbit hole of Columbine and some of the, like, there was a lot of talk about some of the weird classes that were going on that were spiritualistic and occult and different things like that too. The horror genre has moved away from slasher flicks, and it seems like every horror movie that I see an ad for is something that's occult and strange. And I look at it and go, this kind of proliferation of these things, violence or this really weird and warping stuff, is just across all media forms, especially stuff that's targeted at young people, whether it's pop movies or pop video games. What kind of effect is this having on people? It's much broader than just violent video games or making people go out and, shoot up the grocery store. Or their school. I think there's a lot more media to blame and to look at than just that. So I don't like it when we fixate on the one medium. There are many mediums that I think need to be examined as to, what direction they've taken us the last couple of decades.
I think that's definitely true, but when you compare these different mediums, obviously, again, there's a bunch of different causes. We got to look at all the different causes, but I think video games are one that's worth honing in on because of the fact that, for one thing, you can just go down the rabbit hole of playing that for hours and hours and hours a day in a way that I'm not sure you can as much for something like movies or TV shows. I mean, you hear about like binge watching movies or whatever, but I feel like with video games, I have known people before who would just go down the rabbit hole of playing for hours and hours and hours and hours and just wasting their whole lives away on video games. And when those video games are violent in such a way that it, as you said, doesn't have clear good guys and bad guys, especially when it's more morally relative, then you can't say that doesn't do something to you. It's got to do something to you. So I think that violent video games are worth honing in on, specifically within media broadly.
Well, and to the point, and to that point, to agree with you in part of that, as I've looked, you look at it, John and Andy talked about this as well. There was, I think it was an NFL linebacker who was forced to delete a tweet because he was drawing the obvious conclusion that the similarities between the Buffalo shooting in the grocery store and this other guy, when you think of it, not even playing video games, but watching people play video games, Twitch has become this massive, extremely, not just prolific, but profitable service where you literally watch other people stream their gaming experiences.
Which I do not understand. I have no idea what the appeal is.
I don't either. I could see the appeal of playing it, but watching someone else play it seems strange to me. But but I mean, this has become profitable. People make a living off of streaming their playing video games. Well, when you look at it, sure enough, the Buffalo shooter, whether or not there were some sort of radicalized racial motives or not, like he hooked up a GoPro and streamed himself on Twitch. And it looks very eerily similar to probably what a lot of other Twitch channels are, but with video graphics instead of an actual grocery store with real people. Yeah. So certainly, I mean, you see a mimicking or a mirroring of the video game world in that shooting. And I mean, we may not have GoPro footage of all the others. I mean, thankfully, I'm not asking for that, but I'm saying if you did, I wonder how much some of these guys and some of these young men are behaving like something that they it's just part of their normal life nowadays as a young person to see this on Twitch, to have participated in it themselves. So to your point, I think that's accurate. There is something very specific to be said about video games. It's just, my main point is not to ignore just a general desensitization. Because again, on the other side of it, I know a lot of folks, and I want to rabbit trail too much, but, as a big Second Amendment advocate, that's not just Americans should be gun owners, but the Second Amendment exists for us to protect ourselves from tyranny, which could be domestic. That's what happened. The founding fathers wrote that knowing we had to throw off our own government at one point. I'm not advocating for that. Even as bad as I complain about government, that's like the end of the line. There is no more hope. And I don't believe that that's the case for America at all. But as a result of what the spirit of that is, that means being proficient with modern weapons. That means all sorts of things. So it's kind of nice because as the video game culture has come along, there are a lot of people who've gotten interested in firearms in a healthy way. And it has transitioned into healthy, responsible firearms owners who were teenagers and weren't allowed to have firearms. But that then begs the question, how can some of us enjoy a first-person shooter game now and again and not come out with this, and some others, there's still even something deeper there. I mean, yes, this is not necessarily a healthy tool, but it tells I am of the opinion that there's even still something deeper, that I had a value system by which I could process and compartmentalize this. Playing video games, I didn't get sucked into it, but also it didn't lead me to violent tendencies, but also it's because it was left in its proper place somewhere off to the side here. It didn't become my whole life, but that just indicates a balance of values and family life that maybe this leads us into another discussion. I had a home with a male and a female role model, my mom and my dad, who poured into me and taught me how to keep things in balance. And I had these different things worked out. I didn't get to just spend all day in my room on video games, but I also didn't grow up in a home without a dad or without a mom or without whatever it is. What kind of influence does that have? And it's not maybe just the video games, but that's the accelerant on an already existing problem. There's a next topic we could dive into.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to talk about. And I think that relates very directly with this concept that the left has created of toxic masculinity. Because the left sees differences between boys and girls, men and women, as being toxic. When boys do have a tendency to do the things that boys do, then they say that that's bad and that needs to be repressed. But when you have a positive male and female role model in the form of your parents, you get to see the differences between the way that men react, the way that women react, and how either one of those is a good thing. And we need both of those different outlooks on life in order to be a well-functioning society. But instead, the left says boys and girls are the same, and if boys act differently than girls, then they are doing something wrong, and it's toxic, and it's bad, and we have to do something to try to get them to not be that way anymore. And so I think, and I am not a parent. You could speak better to this than I could, but I think that it is so important to have male role models who show boys how they can still show those kinds of male traits of even, to an extent, aggression, to show to channel that into something that is positive, upholding values, defending their family, that sort of thing, and also to model that for girls as well, because girls need to see what a well-functioning adult male acts like. So they know how to perceive those kinds of influences. I think that's really, really important.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree that, and I mean it. It kind of gets touchy because you're not looking to offend anyone, because there are a lot of, and I mean not that I want to sound like the left or the woke. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I mean I'm legitimately not. There are a ton of single mothers, single fathers, through to no choice of their own, are facing raising children, on their own. And it's heartbreaking. It's not how God designed it, but I mean, life happens. We live in a broken, sinful world, and sometimes, people split, sometimes people die. I mean, it happens. That said, though, that doesn't mean that we can't admit what a the ideal looks like. And ideally, a single mom cannot give her sons the same thing that their father could have given them, but she can seek out other male role models that can pour into the lives of her sons. I mean, like, I'd say the same thing though. Like, a single dad cannot give his daughters what their mother could give them, as far as, to your point, the teaching, the training, and the role modeling of it. But he can find other female role models to bring in. So there are a lot of people who overcome circumstances, and this isn't to negate that, but to your point, yes, there's, when you start addressing the epidemic of fatherlessness, it's no surprise to me that it's really specifically young men that we're seeing this rash of things with, because so many more young men are growing up without, that role model of masculinity, which isn't, it's not true. Masculinity isn't not having aggression ever. It's knowing how to, despite all of these things, control and, self-control. We could go into the fruit, but the self-control is one of the biggest ones. And it's, there is, for men and women, and we talked about this earlier, at least I made this comment in the hallway, it's even a little bit different when you find aggression, anger, and frustration lash out. Men and women, girls and boys, respond to that differently. And if you have a young man who's in a home without a male role model to teach him how to train and hone and focus that, what's it going to do? It's going to turn to other mediums, what's available. And we've already kind of started talking about some of that today.
And I'd like to build on that as we pivot to another very crucial aspect of this that I think is worth talking about. I think that you are absolutely right that, single moms, single dads, they're some of the hardest working people in our society. Many, many times they are at a deficit whenever they have kids, and, they've got to try to fulfill some of both of those roles. But at the end of the day, boys and girls need influences, both male and female, both men and women, in their lives, who are there to support them and to show them what men and women are supposed to act like. And I think that, even though a single mom can't do the same thing as a dad could do, there is a way to get those influences in your lives. And I'm not talking about remarriage or whatever. I'm talking about being involved in a local church body.
Exactly.
Being involved in a community of people where there are other people of similar values around who can speak into the lives of young people. And I think that is something that, as a culture, as a church, we're both Christians, and we see so many young people out there who are in situations where they don't have good role models in their lives. And you can't, to an extent, you can't say, not my kid, not my problem.
Oh no.
It is the job of us as Christians, as a church, to see people who are in need and to come alongside them and to love them and to help them, especially young people, to help them to grow into the young men and women that God has created them to be.
Yeah.
And I think there's not only a crisis in terms of a lack of fatherlessness, but I think there's a crisis in terms of a lack of Christian men who see the needs in their own churches and are willing to step in to meet those needs.
Absolutely.
And that's not the flashy political solution that people want to hear about. They want to hear about, let's ban guns, or let's, do this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us, individuals in our communities. Who are the young people that you're around, and what are you doing to help step in and speak truth, speak love into their lives in a way that they're not getting?
Yeah. And that, to your point, I've, having a lot of conversations with people, as not on this topic, but on others, well, I'm not a parent yet. And I've kind of started adopting a mindset of saying, you may not, like you may not have kids, but you have parental responsibility in your life. I guarantee it, because there are young people over whom you have an influence. I'm sure of it, whether it's through church, whether it's your friends' kids, whether it's nieces and nephews. There is some mentorship responsibility that you have as an adult over other people's children. And in a community setting, whether it's literally family or church family or community neighborhood family, hello, we get to go to a shutter problem again. I'll turn that back on.
Well, while you're talking about that, let me pick up from there and just say that, this doesn't, practically speaking, let me tell you this. If you step into somebody's life who doesn't have that male role model and you say, hello, underprivileged person, I am going to be your new dad. Well, that's not going to
Yeah,
work.
exactly.
That's not going to work. But it's not just sitting them down and telling them, let me tell you what it means to be a man. It's living that out.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's showing them.
And that's why I say
example.
the responsibility, because it's not that you necessarily are there to teach. Let me tell you and explain.
Yeah.
You're there. What you do matters in front of other people. You have a responsibility that even if you don't know it, someone's watching. And even if you're not an actual parent yet by, marriage and birth, you have young people with whom that responsibility still likely exists. But, and its camera shutter has distracted me. I've lost my second point. But, what I was going to say is 100%, I agree. I mean, it's not necessarily the flashy answer, but you want to talk about it. It's churches that need to step up in America. It's the Christian values underneath that underpin society that need to come back. And if we're being honest, you take that out to a step broader. We as Christian men have that responsibility with our sphere of influence in the church, but also we as men and women, but you and I as men who are citizens of the United States of America have that similar responsibility with the community around us, even outside of our church. But this just harkens back to why the church in America is so important. Our Christian heritage as a nation, even if not everyone practices the same religion or even actively attends church, those values, those common values really do need to be commonly held and actively pursued across society, because you start to take them away, as we've seen the last 50, 60 years, especially from our young people in schools. I mean, it sounds kind of trite to say it like the Bible thumper, When did this start? When did they take away prayer in schools? Well, but really, when did those values begin to be stripped away? And then how long did it take before some of this stuff really became prevalent in society? So someone here is mentioning, I do see that is a good book. Love Horses, whoever you are, we appreciate you being on our streams and actively commenting. We have a lot of people watching, but you're actively commenting. There's a great book by Vodi Bokum, Family Shepherds. And that is a good book. I've actually read that one. I like it. So everyone take a look at that if you have extra time. I've been posting links, but other people are suggesting good things down there too. So, but yeah, there is a responsibility of, and if I hate to say a fix, but there is something that we all can have to address the epidemic of a broken family and fatherless homes in America. Even if, you can't go like, well, there's only so much you can do, but that there's something there to be done. There's action items to be taken.
Yeah, and let's be clear about that with action items too. I mean, like we said, we have nowhere near enough time to have a full conversation about all of the different factors that contribute to creating this culture where we have boys who go out and do these tragic things. We don't have the time for that. And likewise, the purpose of us having this conversation is not to ignore the issue of protecting the Second Amendment. And, hardening schools, all for it. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
And should we talk about arming teachers? Yeah, let's have that discussion. This is not in any way to diminish the importance of talking about those different issues. But while we fight for those policy objectives, let's remember what we can do right now this week. What anyone who is watching this video can do right now is to, if you're not plugged into a local church, get plugged into a local church and start developing yourself so that you can be that sort of a role model for young people. And if you're already plugged in that way and your relationship with Jesus is strong and you can be that positive role model, look around you. Who are the young people in your life that you see at your church who are hurting? And have a conversation with the Lord about how you can invest in those people and how you can help them to navigate the difficult years of growing up in America today. I mean, video games, movies, social media, all this stuff is just bombarding our young people. And what they need is someone who can help them to get through all of this. Yeah. And of course, it goes without saying too, if you're a father, step up. If you're a mother, step up, provide those influences for your kids.
Yeah.
It's important. It's something that we need to be doing right now, each one of us.
Absolutely. So keep fighting for our Second Amendment rights. Keep fighting to make schools safer. But let's also remember that at the end of the day, you want to talk about why these things are happening, what we can do about it. You can hold the bucket underneath the leak for as long as you need, but unless you fix the leak, it's still going to keep coming. So we got to look at the root cause and find out what we can address, not in a defensive way politically, but in an offensive way. Let's go out into these are the fixes that we need to start applying. Those are the things that we should talk about, equally as important as defending the things that are being attacked. Even if folks are, unfairly using these school shootings to attack something completely unrelated, like your right and my right to, as law-abiding citizens, or yours to own a gun. If they're going to use it that way, we need to be equally as bold and more bold in talking about the real solutions and the real problems that are happening behind this. So
right,
that is important. That's what we're talking about. Do you want to lead us out?
Yeah,
we should let everyone go. We've kept them for 30 minutes today. This isn't an unauthorized caucus. This is like a whole convention.
Oh, wow.
Over 30 minutes, we get to a convention status.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay then. I'll just remind everyone, if you haven't already, please like this video, share it. Let's start having these conversations about what are the root problems of all this madness we see in society. So share this video, subscribe to our channel. We do these videos every Thursday, and we want to make sure that you never miss any of them. So subscribe to this channel and make sure that you've got notifications turned on so that whenever we're live like this, you can see that a video is going on and choose whether or not you want to watch that live or catch it later. So please do all of that. Send us a comment. What did we miss too? What are some of the other things? We just, there's so many things that we need to consider. So please send in a comment as well, and make sure that you are staying plugged in, because we're going to be back again next week for another exciting Unauthorized Caucus. We'll see you then.